You're welcome back to the conversation. In News Central Television is now time for us to switch gears to Tunisia, where there's been a renewed call for the dismissal of President Kais Saied by former President Monsef Marzouki, following a low turnout of voters pegged at 11.3% at the recently concluded parliamentary elections. The former president says the deserted polling stations reflected the growing dissatisfaction with Said's control over the executive, legislative, and judicial arms of government. He therefore called for the restoration of the democratic process.
President Kais Saied, in a move regarded as a constitutional coup last year, sacked the country's prime minister and dissolved parliament. He has insisted that hatred for the parliament is to blame for the low turnout. Meanwhile, a state of emergency imposed on the country since 2015 due to terror attacks has once again been extended till December 31, 2023. And now join us for this conversation, we have Elizia Volkmann, a journalist from Tunis. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so let's begin with the recently concluded elections. Now, according to media reports, just 11% of 8 million eligible voters participated in the elections. I mean, this is coming from where the former president talked about for the dismissal of President Kais Saied, complaining about the low turnout of voters. What was your assessment of the election and voters' participation?
This is pretty much a rerun of what we saw in the first round. People were actively staying away. They were effectively sort of voting with their feet. And there's only 0.1% in terms of voter turnout. But we heard from Maraki Boone, which is the main independent observing association in Tunisia, is that they held a press conference immediately after the polls closed, and they were complaining that the Independent Elections Authority was withholding data. So this is unprecedented for an observer to make such a quick turnaround in terms of a press conference to complain about problems with voting infractions and to complain specifically about withholding data.
Now, Elizia, following the first round of elections, the ISIE president Farouk Boussake claimed that the low turnout rate was due to absence of corrupt political money, unlike previous elections, describing the vote as pure and legitimate. What do you make of that, and what do you think is responsible for such unprecedented level of voter apathy?
Well, I mean, the president of the EC is repeatedly coming out with all sorts of bizarre statements. I mean, it's a pretty lame excuse to say that the reason that people didn't want to vote is because they wouldn't be, there was nobody paying them to vote. That's quite an indictment against the Tunisian people. I mean, what we have seen is a steady decline in voter participation. In 2014, the first round of parliamentary elections was about 69%, and then it sort of fell to, I think, about roughly 48% in 2019. So, I mean, this is part of a trend. And what people have been saying is that, what's voting going to do for me? I mean, surely it should be government, because government is separate from parliament previously. What are they going to do about the economy? They've not seen any change. They've just seen the worsening economy. So I think it's really quite a cruel thing to say against the population.
Now, Elizia is still looking at this indictment. I mean, on one part, you're saying that people are not happy with the current state of Tunis, and that's one of the reasons for the voter apathy. But President Kais Saied came out and said that the reason why is because of the hatred of the parliament. But the former president said the reason why for the voter apathy is because people are not happy with the way Kais Saied is ruling the government. And we also had part of these elections that the Ennahda and opposition parties and civil society groups did not participate in these elections. I mean, what do we make of all of this?
Well, it's a completely different style of parliamentary election. So political parties are not allowed to run en bloc. So it's very difficult to finance a campaign. There was a lot more campaigning this time around, but I think individuals are really struggling to mount the sort of campaign you would expect from a political party anywhere. Not just Tunisia, it's just normal in terms of representation democracy. So the other thing is that most of the political parties actually boycotted it. So there was nobody that anybody recognised, except perhaps from their local community. Who somebody's dentist was running, or a travel agent, who you might know in passing. So there's also a lack of confidence. It's just as much there's a lack of confidence in the political class. There's a lack of confidence that somebody who's normally a dentist or a hairdresser or a shopkeeper or a business owner has the competence to actually vote on laws and to understand how a parliament operates. So I think it's not so much apathy; it's an expression of total lack of confidence.
And of course, there's a lot of confusion with the new electoral system, because you said individuals can't vote for parties and blocks in what have you. Now, let's look at Tunisia's electoral laws. Is there a voter turnout? Is there a voter participation threshold to validate this result? What does Tunisia's electoral laws say about this?
Well, the new electoral laws say that there's no minimum threshold. So, somebody gets 50% of the votes, or there have been several cases where there's been only one candidate in a particular constituency, so they go through automatically. They don't even need a vote. There are 7 seats that have no candidates whatsoever. Apparently, there are going to be yet more elections for those seats in March. So it really is a bit of a mess. It's only individuals and independents can run. So the whole structure is designed to prevent the formation of political blocks forming, so voting blocks. So effectively, it'd be very, very difficult for a law that Saied puts through the parliament to be voted down.
Now, while all of this is happening, and a lot of people are still calling for dismissal of the president, we know that he actually dismisses education and agriculture ministers in a cabinet reshuffle. I mean, what was the reason for this move? Because we saw a lot of people complain about this cabinet reshuffle that Saied is having at the moment.
Well, I mean, what's going on in the cabinet? Again, there's a lot of chaos in government. There isn't clear leadership, because again, Saied is not a professional politician. He's never worked in government. He's not dealt with the day-to-day organisational side. Because I mean, if we get down to brass tacks, leading a country, it's all about management and admin, and it's like running a huge multifaceted organisation. It's unfortunately, people want to go into it because they want power and glamour and money and fame and God knows what. They're not in it because they're passionate administrators. And this is falling down, and there's no coordination, and there's been other dismissals. So there's certainly with the Ministry of Commerce. The Minister of Commerce, she was sacked. I mean, she certainly was quite corrupt. There are a lot of complaints about her. And also the people that have been appointed to government are not particularly experienced. Even the Prime Minister, she's not a particularly experienced bureaucrat or technocrat. So this is a big problem. So I think we could see more sackings and dismissals and reshuffles as he's trying to find a solution for the fact that his government is inexperienced, disorganised, and just doesn't really have the competence that one would hope of a nation state.
Now, opposition political parties are calling for early presidential elections. They say, this is that this is a referendum on President Saied's popularity, and the people obviously are saying they don't want him. They're disenchanted with his methods of ruling. Now, what is the position of opposition groups and, of course, the all-powerful labor unions, the UGTT and the others? What are they saying about this current situation, the political and, of course, the economic situation? Because cost of living is going off the roof, and ordinary Tunisians are not happy with the state of things in the country.
Ordinary Tunisians, even well-off Tunisians, I mean, the prices are, they're doubling and tripling, and there are more and more products going off the market. It's very, it's becoming increasingly difficult. And if you're at the bottom of the social level, it's agonising. In terms of the different opposition, it seems that the National Salvation Front coalition, which includes NAFTA, and the Democratic Bloc, are beginning to maybe not exactly come together, but they're sort of inching closer. And certainly one of the Democratic Bloc leaders, Al Jamaria, he's been saying, look, we've got to get past our political differences and work as a bloc. So they're calling for Saied to step down. There's sort of mixed calls in terms of what happens next. Most people want some kind of national dialogue that we saw in 2013. There's a concern that if things go straight to presidential elections, that Kais Saied actually could get back in, and he's entitled to run again. The alternatives are just not very popular. There's a general disenchantment with the political elites.
And yeah, you're talking about the disenchantment and, of course, the economic situation in Tunisia. I know that they're still trying to get bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Will this help situations at the moment?
The International Monetary Fund loan is a long, long way off. Moody's downgraded Tunisia from CAA1 down to CAA2, which is basically saying that Tunisia is very high risk of defaulting on a loan. And they didn't just downgrade the government of the country; they downgraded the central bank as well. So this is very bad news. So I don't think it will. It will still take a long time for the money to roll out, even if there is a yes, which won't be a yes until March at the very earliest. The IMF said that they wanted to see a parliament actually sworn in and installed. So if there's yet more upheaval with a new round of elections, that could actually put the IMF loan off even further, which is, it's going to apply even more stress to the country. And there's, without a sort of a united opposition, creating real alternatives to the current system and a really sort of fresh outlook about how they're going to sort the country out. They could just be making the same mistakes they always have, which is addressing the political problem and not addressing the economic problem.
Now, Elizia, before we let you go, finally, I mean, look, going back to 2019, President Kais Saied won with quite a margin, and people were happy to move away from the days of the Ben Ali dictatorship. There was a lot of hope. They thought, since he's a university professor, he's not an establishment candidate, he will bring about much of a difference. As we speak today, how popular is President Kais Saied? And if he were to stand for elections in the next general elections, which we think he would, what would be his chances?
Well, weirdly enough, he actually stands a very good chance, but that's because he's one of the least unpopular of a bunch of very unpopular people. His popularity has certainly gone down, but in polls over the past year, they said if an election happened tomorrow, who would you actually vote for? And in the past, but we're talking about a year ago, people were still saying that they would vote for him. At the moment, we don't have a fresh young face or an alternative or a very dynamic new political party that's coming to the fore. So Tunisia could end up in a complete political deadlock for a lot longer.
But like they say in politics, 24 hours is a long time. Thank you very much, Elizia Volkmann, for your time. We do appreciate your insights and contribution to the program.
Thank you.
And